Welcome debaters to a video that's going to take you through the absolute basics of DAV schools competition debating. So you should continue watching this video if this is your first time debating, you haven't debated for a while, or you just want a recap of the very basics of this style of debating. So first of all, what's the night actually going to look like when you turn up at your debate time ready to debate? So when you walk into the room, it'll look a little something like this, or when you're debating, it'll look a little something like this. So if we were the adjudicator looking out at the room, we'll see the affirmative team on the left-hand side of the room and the negative team on the right-hand side of the room. The adjudicator will sit somewhere in the middle or somewhere in the audience facing the speakers, and the speaker will stand in between the two teams and will speak outwardly. It is important to note that the speaker doesn't face the opposing team as they're speaking, but they speak to the adjudicator and to the audience because that's who they're trying to persuade. And we know that that's what debating is about, essentially, is persuading an audience of a particular point of view. So at the moment, we have the first speaker of the affirmative team speaking. Generally speaking, we will sit first speaker, second speaker, third speaker, but that's up to you really. There's no rules about how you sit amongst your team members. You might like to sit in a different order according to your preferences. So how will the debate actually run? Well, first of all, the chairperson or the adjudicator will welcome everyone to the debate and will restate the topic. Each speaker will give their presentation in order. So our first affirmative speaker speaks first, then our first negative speaker, then our second affirmative speaker, and so on. So there are a couple of things that happen while each speaker gives their presentation. The first is that the members of the other team try and think of rebuttals. And the other is that the adjudicator listens to the debate and they will score as they go. They'll also take notes on what's actually happened in the debate to refer to. At the end of the debate, once everyone's had an opportunity to speak, the adjudicator will tally the scores. There'll be an opportunity for you to shake hands, maybe chat amongst yourselves. And finally, what you've all been waiting for, the adjudicator will announce the winner of the debate and will provide you with some feedback and comments about who's won the debate. So what does each speaker actually do? So basically, the first speaker for the affirmative has several roles that they have to fill. As I said before, they are the first speaker of the debate, so what we call opening the debate. Something that the first speaker of the affirmative team has to do is give the team line, and this will usually be one of the very first things they say. So it'll generally be something as simple as, tonight the affirmative team believes that, and then it might just be either a restating or a direct reiteration of the topic at hand. Tonight, the affirmative team believes that smoking in public places should be banned. Something else that the first speaker will do is provide a definition of their understanding of the terms of the topic. So to use my example that I just used, that smoking in public places should be banned, they'll have to go through how the affirmative team interprets the term public place, as well as what should be banned and what smoking means. Now, you've got to be careful with definitions. As a team, when you come up with a definition, it's got to be a logical definition. It's got to make sense. So as this last comment says, this obviously isn't going to be a debate about smoking bacon or smoking fish. What they mean is smoking cigarettes. So the first speaker of the affirmative team would have to say something like, as the affirmative team, we define smoking as smoking of cigarettes and tobacco, public places as spaces that are shared by community and not privately owned, and banned as an offence under law. That's just an example. Obviously, your definition could be slightly different. The first speaker will then explain the team split. So the team split is basically just a sort of a broad overview of what the arguments are and who's going to present them. So they'll say something like, as first speaker for the affirmative team, tonight I will be presenting the economic arguments associated with this debate and why smoking should be banned. Our second speaker will cover the social impacts of a ban on smoking. A team split will be different for each debate, but it's just basically what we call signposting or flagging, or giving the adjudicator an expectation of what each speaker is going to talk about. And it's really, really important. And we'll talk about that later in terms of what you're being scored on. After the first speaker has done all of those things, so they've given their team line, they've given a definition, and they've outlined the team split, they might say something like, now I'll move into my arguments. And they'll provide 2 or 3 arguments for the speaking time. It's really important that the first speaker, both for the affirmative and the negative team, presents the strongest arguments that that team has. So that's part of being a debater, is operating as a team. And one thing that that team has to do is make sure that the first speaker, whoever that speaker is, has the most persuasive, the strongest arguments of the team. Before they sit down, they might quickly summarize their arguments. Today I have spoken to you about the economic benefits of a ban such as this, and then restate their team line. And that is why we believe that smoking in public places must be banned. So the first speaker for the negative team has a similar but slightly different role. So they open the negatives team side of the debate. They're the second speaker of the debate overall, but first speaker obviously of the negative team. So same thing, they're going to give you the team line. We as the negative team strongly believe that smoking must not be banned in public places, as it is an outright breach of freedom. Now they do have to address the definition in some way. Generally speaking, the negative team will accept the definition that's been put forward if it's a logical definition, if it's a rational definition. If the affirmative team has put forward a definition that really shouldn't be accepted. So for instance, with our same example, if they had said smoking of all meats and fishes in public places should be banned, then as the negative team, you could definitely say, we as the negative team do not accept the definition that the affirmative team has put forward for the following reasons. But then they would still have to rebut the points that the affirmative team has put forward. Now, this is something that the first speaker of the negative team does that the first speaker of the affirmative team doesn't. The first speaker of the negative team will need to rebut the arguments that the first speaker of the affirmative team has put forward. So they'll have to say, the first speaker of the affirmative team argued that, blah, 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 blah. However, this is not the case, or this is incorrect, or this is illogical because, blah, 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 blah. Same as the first speaker of the affirmative team, the first speaker of the negative team will need to outline a team split, and they will also need to argue a case presenting 2 or 3 arguments, and again, the strongest arguments. And again, they'll summarize their team's arguments before moving forward. So the second speaker of both the affirmative and the negative team have the same role, so they're going to complete the same steps. Generally speaking, they will stand up and again restate the team line. Ladies and gentlemen, we on the affirmative team believe that smoking in public places must be banned. They'll then remind the audience of what the first speaker covered and also what they're going to cover. So a little reminder of the team split. Ladies and gentlemen, this evening my first speaker has already told you about the economic benefits of banning smoking in public places. Today, as second speaker, I am going to present to you the social benefits of a ban on smoking in public places. Importantly though, the second speaker is also going to do quite a lot of rebuttal. So about 1/3 of their speech should be rebuttal. So again, they're going to signpost that. They might say something like, however, before I move into my substantive arguments, I must rebut some of the things that the first speaker of the negative team said that were incorrect. Firstly, blah, 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 blah. Once they have done that rebuttal and they've structured that rebuttal, they've gone through it really carefully, they'll then present their arguments. So about 3 arguments, but that might differ from debate. So once they've finished their rebuttal, they might say something like, now into my substantive matter. And then they might present their case. Again, they might do a very, very quick summary of their arguments and again finish with that team line. And that's why it's called a team line. It's because it is presented over and over within the debate. The third speaker has a different role again. There's a couple of really important things to note if you're the third speaker. So you may open with the team line, or you may just go into it. So you may start off by saying, ladies and gentlemen, we on the affirmative team have presented to you countless arguments that make it clear that banning smoking in public places is an absolute necessity. Or the third speaker might go straight into their rebuttal, because essentially the role of a third speaker is to rebut. So they might open the debate by saying, ladies and gentlemen, the negative team has tonight presented to you a number of false, misleading, and flimsy arguments as to why smoking in public places should not be banned. Tonight, I will refute each of those arguments and show you why smoking in public places must be banned. So their rebuttals as the third speaker is going to take up about 3/4 of their speech. So it's really the job of a third speaker to rebut. That means that as third speaker, you do not present any new arguments. You do not present any new substantive matter. Once you have rebutted, you will go through a quick summary of your whole team's arguments. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight my first speaker told you about the economic benefits of banning smoking. My second speaker told you about the social benefits of banning smoking. And I have thoroughly refuted each of the claims that the negative team has presented to you. And for that reason, we are very proud to propose that smoking in public places should be banned. Concluding with the team line. So here's a little summary of what that looks like. I'm not going to go through that too much, but this is just sort of a visual of how that sort of the number of rebuttals increases over time. So as you get more comfortable with rebuttal, you might want to take on a role as a second speaker or a third speaker. If you're less comfortable, you might want to practice being a first speaker. So how long do you speak for? It differs between grades. So at D grade, it's just between 4 and 5 minutes, moves up, and at A grade, we should be speaking between 6 and 8 minutes. So what are you actually going to be marked on? Well, in debating, we're marked on 3 things: manner, matter, and method. So manner is basically how you speak. What is your delivery style? How is your tone, eye contact, pacing, volume, all those sorts of things? How do you present? Because remember, debating is about persuasion, and how we present to the audience definitely impacts how persuasive we're going to be. Here are some quick tips on manner. Make eye contact, vary your tone and volume, use hand gestures, and importantly, add pauses. You can read through those things a little bit more, but hopefully this is something you're fairly on top of in terms of being engaging with your audience. The next thing you're going to be judged on is matter. So what is your content? Are your arguments strong? Are they supported with evidence? Do they make sense? And in order to get a really high score on that matter component of the scoring, you're going to have to have researched really thoroughly before your debate. So your matter points really come down to how thoroughly you have prepared. Here are some matter tips. Make sure your arguments are relevant. Always have evidence, examples, quotes. Remember that you also get matter marks for your rebuttal. So it's the same thing. Is the content of your rebuttal also well thought out, logical, strong? Try and provide examples for your rebuttal as well. And last but not least, you're judged on your method. So not just what you say and how you say it, but the order that you say it in. So have you structured, has each speaker structured their arguments well? Have they signposted really clearly? Now I am going to. And also, has the team structured its arguments really well? So what I was saying before, has the first speaker presented the strongest arguments? Has the second speaker presented the less strong arguments? And has the third speaker really thoroughly rebutted the other team's arguments? And so last but not least, here are some method tips. Again, restating that team line, remembering to remind your adjudicator of the team split, concluding with a brief summary, and of course, always signposting. So hopefully this video gives you a bit of an idea of the basics of debating. Remember that your handbook is a fantastic resource and you can always find out more on the St Leonard's Debating and Public Speaking page.